Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith with co-host Dave Anderson. Welcome, listeners. Welcome,
Hello.
Dave.
Yeah, hello. Looking forward to talking tennis.
We've been asked to go back to the basics. The overhead. Let's talk about the overhead. I know one time we talked about short-lived experience that you and I had running Seguso Bassett, the Funk Seguso Bassett Tennis Training Center, which is now Chris Everett, and late Arthur Cohen. I said, Arthur, you're always thinking about a different overhead. You just think of that word when parents, they have an overhead. It's over your head. It's kind of like you have a deadline. This is a great word. Where'd that come from? Well, if you don't do it, you're dead. You got a deadline.
Yeah.
But just the term overhead.
You don't want that hanging over your head.
Where to begin? It's tennis terminology. It's a lesson unto itself. It's just a shot you hit over your head. Very basic.
Yeah.
Where to begin? It's a negative thought, doom and gloom, dark. It's a safe bet that there's many, many junior tennis players that have gone 5 years where they really play matches where they don't hit overheads. I mean, I've charted experienced players where, it's always, did they go over 100 points and not hit one overhead, not even have an attempt on an overhead? The overhead's a statement. It means that you've played the offensive point. If you're playing overhead, that means you're dictating play. It's certainly an offensive shot. It's really interesting that the top players, they don't generally angle the overhead off. They pop it over the fence. But it's basically, to define it, it's an abbreviated serve. The ball's falling from the position of the lob. You swing up more on the overhead than any other shot. But that's not what happens. When people are at the net, they see their target straight ahead. They see their target downward. And they do everything wrong. The palm goes up and they pull down. And when they pull down, then the body has to go left and go backwards. They displace force. In other words, they take energy away from the shot. But the overhead, go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, I did an adult clinic, and I don't know if it's, I've heard somebody say it before, but to me, when you watch a lot of tennis, whether it's juniors or adults, I mean, overheads are like prison in that, people get very religious when a lob goes up and they have to hit an overhead, and they get religious when they find out they're going to have to do some time in prison. Ties in so much to the volley, right? I always tell the kids, until you get a great overhead, your volley's a bluff. And it's not a shot that, we talk about it. You go and watch a typical tournament, and players will just spend so much time hitting groundies, and then they'll hit one or two volleys, and sometimes not even an overhead. In fact, it's not uncommon to see a lot of the players out on the WTA. They'll just request a swing volley instead, and that became kind of a habit about 5-7 years ago. I noticed that, but they'll hit them, but it's like you said, it's very misunderstood shot, and the technique is why so many people fear that particular shot when that lob goes up in the air. The flaws, it interrelates so much to the flaws we see on the player's serve as well.
I love the drill where we go right up to the net. You get a partner. Your partner for safety stands to the side of you. You set the racket up in the overhead position, but you have a ball in your left hand. Say it's a right-handed player. So they toss the ball up. You hit an overhead, and then you hit a serve. Hit the serve on balance. And they're so similar. So similar. I remember Dick Stockton, great tennis player. He's one time his peers said he had the best overhead in tennis, and he had a full motion on his overhead. But he also was a great tennis player by the time he was 10. There's the story with Dick Stockton back in the day. Maybe it was a little bit safer in the United States, but Dad would put him on a bus as a 10-year-old. He'd travel across the country. There'd be somebody on the other end to pick him up. But talk about street smarts.
Good athlete.
John McEnroe, Douglastown, or Douglaston. Anyway, it was one of the first towns on Long Island, and he used to take the train into Trinity, the school in Manhattan. Where did he get his street smarts? Where he knows everything that's going around him. Well, if you're in New York, you're looking to your left, you're looking to your right. You got to look out for yourself. You got to make sure that you're not in danger. I mean, Billy and Leon Lip, to digress, they used to train our umpires.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they're saying that McEnroe, I mean, if you changed a ball kit, he would know it. On our podcast with Carlos Goffey, who coached McEnroe as a kid, tells a story about where McEnroe, just went over and sat on the bench. And Carlos is a young kid and young coach. And he says, "Why are you sitting on the bench?" He goes, "This is a dumb drill." He goes, "Why is it a dumb drill?" He goes, "When you play a match, you're not going to hit 20 overheads in a row." And it's a pretty good point. So he definitely was.
Mm-hmm.
He definitely was a thinker. He definitely was a gamer from way back when. I think the overhead, if you go back to Dennis Vandermeer did so much for us, so much for tennis teaching. His logo was the trophy look. It was left arm up, scratch the back. That comes from Les Stoffen, who was one of the better servers in the 1930s, and that's what the artist, the sculptor, said. No, this is how you're going to position yourself for this photo, this statue. They did the same thing in football years ago. I remember the famous football player Roman Gabriel, L.A. Rams. They used to do a picture of a quarterback like in a high school yearbook. They'd have the left arm straight ahead, pointing forward, and the racket or the football in what we call the back scratch position. Braden, you only use the back scratch position if your back itches. If you really know what happens to that racket head, the racket doesn't get close to the back. But a couple things on the overhead. Start when you're up at the net. Really good players, split step. Should say older players, stronger players, experienced players. And you're going to have almost a continental grip, a composite grip. And then, so that's one grip at the net. And then it goes to the backhand volley. You're going to use right side of one. But then it goes up. The overhead's on two. The base knuckle and the heel pad are on the second panel of the racket. So the righties go one panel to the right. Lefties have to do just the opposite. So base knuckle and the heel pad. So you have a continental grip. And very difficult to conceptualize. You're not going to swing straight ahead. You're going to swing left to right. Use your left hand. Their left hand to help you for several reasons on your overhead. It's going to help you change your grip. It's going to help you relax the muscles in your right arm. It's going to help you set the racket at the most efficient angle. If you keep your left hand on the racket longer in the beginning, it's going to help you keep the left arm longer, keep it up longer in the end. So the primary movement is when you turn for an overhead, your left hand's on the racket. We'll call it the quarterback position. So then from there, the left arm goes up. It can help you shield the sun. The left hand helps you stay tall, stay sideways. If you keep the left arm up, you're decelerating the left side so you can accelerate the right. So it's very, very important to set the racket up properly. And when you do that, you're maintaining the racket in that closed position, the quarterback position, where the racket faces hooded or palm down. I asked Welby Van Horn one time, I said, "Welby, you never miss an overhead." His answer was, "Well, Steve, when I was a kid, we didn't have TVs." So I think it's very, very important that a kid can go out and self-feed a lob. And I like them to do it where they hit the ball up off their strings. They're hitting it off the racket. I've seen some kids just try to bounce a ball, slap it down. You can just take 3 tennis balls. You can work on your running technique. I'm going to hit 3 self-fed overheads. I'm going to run to the other side, do 3 sprints. Get this ball, get that ball, this ball. But people don't think of, okay, I'm going to practice a self-fed overhead. I like the idea of 10 and 10. Why don't you do this before practice starts? Get there with a practice partner. You feed me 10, I'll feed you 10. We hit 100 overheads before practice starts. I guarantee if people do that, they're going to have confidence in their overhead. One definition of confidence is repetition.
Mm-hmm.
People avoid the overhead. like you said, they'll back up and they'll play the swing volley, but, what they'll do is they'll go for the $100 shot from the 10-cent position. They're just gonna try to take that mid-court ball and just rip it for a winner. They might as well just wave their arms up and go, well, and it's usually other problems at the net too, that one, don't have the instincts to move diagonally, don't have the instincts to go forward. You know, they're not efficient off the forehand volley or backhand volley. Braden was always saying, you have to value volleying position and you have to trust your shots at the net. So say, for example, someone has a weak backhand volley, they're going to end up having a weak overhead because they won't go to the net because of they're trying to hide from the volley. South African, John Laughlin Diaga, it's a great line. Maybe he heard it from someone else, but I remember him saying years ago in pro tennis, if you have a weakness, they'll find it. But I would say for the most part, pros, they can hit overheads. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, when we started talking about overheads, I started thinking about Novak in his early days. It was a major liability. No, I mean, I don't know if liability is the right word, but it certainly was a shot that you could tell he didn't have a lot of belief in. He's really improved it over the years.
He
Yeah.
had a problem with palm up. Gumby, so flexible, so good from the baseline. He says it, he said it to Laver one time where he was holding the Australian Open trophy and he said, Mr. Laver, thanks for watching. I know I need to go to the net more. It was during the trophy presentation. And he certainly is improved upon that. He's improved upon so much in his game, so much in his game. It didn't really work out. At one point, he was working with Todd Martin, but that didn't work out. But he's worked. I've heard people say that no one has spent more on their game and invested more in their own game than Novak Djokovic. I like the deal where he's paying. You hear things and maybe it's just wrong, but they have funny money at that level, but he's paying feedback $25,000 to come and hang out with him during the majors. It was short-lived, but they asked him why. But feedback, Coach Lendl, and Lendl started coaching Murray. And they asked Novak, why do you have feedback in your corner? He goes, I want to know what he's telling. I want to know what Lendl's telling Murray. Kind of interesting. The shuffle step is a problem. You take crossover steps.
Mm-hmm.
You take half the steps to cover twice the distance, but you're also incorporating shoulder rotation when you take crossover steps. I tell little kids, Tom Brady, when he was in elementary school, 5th, 6th grade, his dad had him practicing being a quarterback. And, there's so many examples, but that would be one where the same take the snap from the center, the same crossover steps that his dad was teaching when he's in the, say, 5th grade. It's the same thing he was doing all those years in the NFL. He played till he was 45. So, I think that's a problem that we don't use other sports to teach now because kids don't play other sports.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, everybody back in the day on the boy side, the girls, it was very unfair. If the girls, they didn't get a chance way back when. If they liked sports, they were called a tomboy. Because they wanted to play with the boys. Boys were having more fun. But the overhead, you have to keep your eyes at the hit. The head shifts. So the brain is a fifth of a second ahead of the hand. So people sneak a peek. So then when the eyes go, so they haven't even made contact point yet, but the eyes go, now the head goes. And as the head goes, which once again, inch for inch, the heaviest part of the body opens up. The body's the leader. So if the body's going left, it's very difficult for the racket to go up and out to the right. But it is definitely a shot that needs to be practiced.
Yeah, I always think of, the 2 R's, read and react, going back to a Vic Braden drill where, you just get with a partner and feed them, you're at the net and feed them a ball and then just become really good at, you're either saying lob or drive and start to learn to, move forward if it's a drive, move backward quickly if it's a lob, and developing that instinct again of reading the opponent a little bit, but then just, once you do see the flight of the ball, connect the eyes and the feet and really get moving. Try to get under it. I always tell little kids, pretend you're catching popcorn in your mouth, and
Yeah.
you got to outrun it. Yeah.
Yeah, big brain. Driver left, driver left, driver left. Yeah, you got to analyze to anticipate. You need to read the body language. If a player's got an open racket face and they're leaning back, they're going to lob. But I think it's very important. You travel as a team, a squad. I just want to know, how many overhead attempts do they have? We've said for years, we like the player in the 12 and unders who has the most attempts at overheads. Philip Farmer. That's a name from the past. So it was 14 and under consolation finals, Cotton Bowl. So you have to win a few matches to be in the consolation final. Timmy Hurst, he wins the match. He played at SMU. Phil Farmer played at Oklahoma, correct? So
yeah, yep.
I remember Dr. Hurst, brilliant researcher. I was using Bill Jacobson's CT 120, and I said, Timmy, you won the match. 99% sure it was consolation. Not to take anything away from him, but anyway, I said, Timmy, you won the match, but this guy dominated. He was just missing volleys at overheads. Just missing volleys and overheads. And that comes back to we say it week after week. Winning's not confusing. It's totally confusing. Offense, defense drills. One player has to stay back. One player has to come in. Just being very creative with the drills. You can do a drill where you put yourself by the net post. You have 4 players. It's a doubles drill. And after each point, they run in and touch the net. And then you just call off the name. And then you feed the ball. And, so player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4, they touch the net. And, okay, I'm feeding the lob to player number 1. You have to let the ball bounce. But it starts with an overhead. Run to the net. Practice your crossover steps. And, you just got to find, okay, we have to find ways for them to, be at the net and play overheads.
Yeah, what about the wall?
Yeah, definitely. If you're with a skilled player, walls are great. Say for example, you want to play the emergency shots, but first on the overhead, you put the racket in the salute position or quarterback position, and you hit the floor of the court, and the ball hits the wall and goes up. And you can consecutively, if someone can do that, they're a pretty good tennis player. They're skilled. The sad thing is that it's more and more difficult to find a wall because walls don't make money and they're not built. They're not built now. I remember being in a beautiful city just one time, Chattanooga, and there's a lot of really nice tennis centers in Chattanooga, but there's one, and this used to be more commonplace. It's a regular tennis court, and there's a huge wall in the middle. There's no net. It's just a huge wall. The lines are there. It's set up as a tennis court. And Holiday Park, where Chrissy Everett, now it's Jimmy Everett, named after her dad. I remember the kids used to practice. They would lob back and forth. You couldn't even see the person on the other side of the net. That would be a Chris Everett drill when she was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, an emergency shot, we'd get into that another time, but there's so many of those. But you do the same thing. Like say the teenage boys, they're the hot shots. They want to be able to hit a tweener. Want to hit a tweener, find a backboard, take a con on the grip with a racket salute position. You do hit up on overheads, as I said, more than any other shot. But in this drill, to make it work, you initiate by hitting down. But yet it's still the timing and the swing. It's all there. So it's a great, glad you mentioned that. It's a great training tool. What else you got on overheads?
Well, I think it ties into everything that we're trying to make sure doesn't die a slow death, mid-court in play, and a kind of a package deal, approach shots, volleys, overheads. And gosh, it's such a fun part of the game. And I think that there's definitely a major threat of losing those shots, certainly gaining really, really good ownership of them. in today's tennis world. And I think that we that are coaching the game, we need to really make sure that part of the game is built and built from a very young age, because it's a lot of fun to play the net. And if you're going to play the net, you're going to have to learn to hit overhead. To me, it is no different than a young basketball player dribbling right, dribbling left, and being able to shoot layups with both hands. Free throws and a 3-pointer, maybe even someday. But it's just a part of the game, and it's a part of the game that shouldn't be left.
Having baseball gloves, baseballs, footballs. Johann Fruhling in German, you've met him. He's been with us off and on in the States now for 5 years. He had a sports science degree in Germany. Now he has an MBA. Spent some time with Chad Berryhill, St. Leo. Actually, it was just a matter of circumstances. He ended up being the coach for one semester as a grad assistant. His team ended up 2 in the nation. But this weekend, I was over the past several days, not just the weekend, but he was up in Orlando with Matt Clore and had a chance to, he was with Coach Illy as well. And he had a chance to be around Shelton a little bit, Ben Shelton. But one of the reasons that guy had such a great serve is when he was a kid, he wanted to be a quarterback. So it is a throwing motion. It is a throwing motion. And, just getting kids to a good warm up is have kids go out on the court, no rackets, just catch the ball and throw it back and forth. The drill we have called lightning ball, we learned it from the late David Schneider, the coach at Texas, that you have to be able to throw and catch to play lightning ball. It's basically ultimate frisbee with a tennis ball. And I think it's very important to talk about the 3 balls in a sock, the old baseball trick. Baseball weighs almost 6 ounces, a tennis ball 2 ounces. You say you take 3 balls, you put it in a sock, and if your palm goes up, you have the throwing motion. With the palm up, the balls hit you in the back of the head. But being able to serve the sock, throw the sock, run jogging with the sock, do it left-handed, right-handed. In football, you have the bullet pass, and then you have the Hail Mary. The overhead is really the bullet pass, down and out, the short pass. You just turn quickly, abbreviated swing. And it's just the action that you make. The racket goes 450 degrees. I mean, it's 90, it's 180, it's 180. And once you start that forward motion, the comb the hair action, how the palm will go between your right shoulder and your elbow, and then that jolt upwards. Having the power line, Braden, tennis is a lifting game. The overhead and the serve, you lift. Every shot, you're coming right out of your shoes. You coil from the ground. You stay in contact with the ground until the last segment of the kinetic chain. So your forearm snapping out on the serves and overheads. But that's where, slow motion training, really understanding the movement. There's certain things, parents beware, coaches beware, is little kids are going to revert back to a forehand grip. Because brain memory, they've hit so many overheads the wrong way. And they're going to go with the old. The old's better than the new. And you can just see when the ball goes up, they start to refinger the racket. Then all the drills, all the drills, wrong side, correct side. So you actually lead in and you hit on the opposite side of the racket. You just do a few of those. You wouldn't want to do that long term. Any progression, you don't want to do it long term. Just do it for several minutes. Say, Braden used to say, just do it 5 to 7 minutes. Don't do it too long, because then that movement becomes ingrained. But you don't want to have a patty cake overhead. And to be a complete player, boom, boom, and more boom. The serve in the overhead, one starts the point, one ends the point. And it's really ironic in many ways that they're so similar. But I'd say that most people, the rules are you have to start with the serve. They start with a serve, but they very seldom end with an overhead.
Mm-hmm.
You play your approach shot. This is the way it works. If you improve in the red zone, the backcourt, all of a sudden you're better. You're more consistent. You're hitting deeper. Your ground strokes are heavier. You're going to get more short balls in the yellow zone. So now in the green zone, if you go up there and you can hit one deep volley, you're going to hit overheads. The concept WWW, weak, weaker, weakest. You finally have your opponent, they're in such a vulnerable position, off the court, off balance, is all they can do is throw up a lob. And that's where you have them in the weakest position. Braden's always saying when a player, 4 weak positions, their legs are crossed and the racket's low, legs are crossed and the racket's up high. So on the forehand side and on the backhand side. And you have to use, like you said, read and react. You have to see that. And you can't hesitate. I mean, you have to go. I ask people all the time, what should you be ready for first, a ball in the air or a ball off the bounce? And a lot of little kids will say off the bounce. No, you have to be ready for a ball in the air. And you say, why? They have to be ready for a ball in the air because it has to be in the air to go over the net. It's just think it through, have some logic, have some common sense. Overheads.
Yeah.
No, and you got to just love overheads. That's another thing too. Is it's as big as a beach ball. I don't talk too much about Bill Cosby anymore, but I had all his books, including his tennis book. And the tennis book was all illustrations. And he had all these funny faces. But when the overhead goes up, fear inhibits movement. You could just see when the overhead goes up is people get tight. They get tight because, and this is another thing. This was with Braden and Malcolm Gladwell, the book Blink. You just know without knowing. But there's a big difference that a kid in practice, they can hit overheads when the coach is feeding the ball out of the basket. But that doesn't mean they can hit overheads in a match. Because if they've never hit overheads in a match, there's 2 sets of motor programming. So they're programming that fishbowl and everything's nice in the clinic and the coaches feed me overheads. But if it's a match and they don't have a history of hitting overheads in a match, Braden I should say Malcolm Gladwell was just amazed at Braden. Well, how do you know that? Well, I just know without knowing. As, you can see kids get tight in their facial expression and their movements, but then also in what they do with the racket. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know what a palm down motion is, you can't unsee it. I mean, but it's amazing. A lot of people, they could be in tennis their whole life. It's like the line from the book, actually, Moneyball. The line paraphrasing. It's amazing you be a sport for your whole life and know so little about it. I think having kids play tennis, baseball, kids aren't good enough initially with 2 rackets to say, okay, let's see you guys go out and rally. And it's fun. You got to be careful. They could throw, the older players can throw their arm out, but just to do some of it where you're a human ball machine, you catch the ball and then you throw it. And, you can just say, okay, throw bullet passes. Okay, now throw Hail Marys, alternate. So one throw is the overhead throw and one is the full motion throw. But it does teach strategy. It teaches ball awareness and it's fun. It's good exercise. And they actually play more tennis when they're very young, playing what we call tennis baseball, than just when they just go out and try to rally back and forth.
Yeah, I love that drill.
But the contact point, it's another thing too, is players usually move back slow on an overhead. It's an optical illusion. You see an airplane going off in the distance. It looks like it's floating. The airplane looks like it's going much slower than the train that's close by or the car is close by. So when the lob's up high, people move back slowly. And then you can't reconfirm. You can't go, oh, it's a lob. Yes, it's a lob. You just got to go. And that's Braden. Braden is drive a lob, drive a lob, drive a lob. It's a drive. So you move in. It's a lob. You move back. And again, Braden loved basketballs. It's like being under the boards looking for rebound. The point's almost over. So your reaction time, it's like you can't be afraid of hitting overheads. We always tell people this comes from Paul Wardlaw. If you're going to miss in a point ending situation. Back of the court back of the court you're building, middle of the court you're forcing. The younger players, the overhead is 3 different shots. If the overhead is different in the green zone, yellow zone, and red zone. For a younger player in the red zone, the overhead is a ground stroke. In the yellow zone, the overhead is an approach shot. And then up at the net, it's a put away. But the pros is pretty much baseline to baseline. I remember watching Berglund feed balls to Borg, Boca West. It's a side story. I was in Sweden with Mark Hamlin studying tennis, and we were really nice. People are being very nice to us, let me say that. So I was told to take booze because booze is really expensive in Sweden. So I took a case of booze. We drove from northern Germany. And this guy said, hey, come on to the parking lot. So I gave him 2 bottles of booze. And he said, why don't you come back tonight? So we came back, and Borg was playing. It was a second week of Wimbledon, and Borg was practicing. But anyway, to watch Berglund feed balls to Borg, I remember watching Harry Hopman feed balls. Borg would be at the baseline hitting the overhead. When you have young juniors feed one another, to really find out how well people lob. I remember as a young kid, had a chance for a couple of years to watch tennis played at Madison Square Garden. My brother was assistant hockey coach for New York Rangers. And, then you have a reference point. The ceiling's pretty high in Madison Square Garden, and they're lobbing so high. But I do think there's a lot of juniors that try to blast their way out of points, too. I don't think a lot of people are very good lobbers. I think too many young juniors, when they hit a lob, it's stupid. They're just trying to hit a winner. You're playing somebody who's 45 minutes in, and they're at the net for the first time, and you're trying to hit a TV topspin lob. Just give them some hang time. Braden used to say, if you miss your lob 3 feet long, just aim 3 feet higher. And then you push them back. And then the transition, how's it go? SRRTC, serve, return, rally, transition, close. Just get them off the net. I love that drill. You've put the ball in play as an overhead, it bounces, they hit up the middle, but you don't want them to lob twice. So then do they have that short, compact swing where they can take the overhead and not lob a second time, but hit a ground stroke off of it. People hit an overhead and they don't close in. You don't hit an overhead and become a spectator of your own shot. You hit the overhead, then you close in. I think also, too, is that you don't have to be fancy on the overhead. Your opponent is typically going to hit another minus. So then the second overhead is going to be easier than the first. So I don't think you really have to make the shot too good.
Yeah.
Got to be loose. It's really interesting. Like, say, ground strokes and volleys, the wrist is fixed and it's more swinging with your arm from your shoulder. But the serve and overhead are definitely different shots. I think that's something that really helped Federer out. You get in the corner and you can hit those squash shots. I think people have played other shots. It helps them with emergency shots. Anytime a ball is hit behind you, you have to use a continental grip. I remember one time being at the USTA with a kid, Victor Lilov. We brought him out to your place.
Yeah.
He did well. He won the 12s of Orange Bowl, La Petite. So I took him to a USTA clinic one time. I remember them saying, well, the continental family. And the overhead is definitely in the continental family. The serve's in the continental family. The emergency shots in the continental family. But where I would disagree with the Braden math is that the volleys and the approach shots, even the underspin lobs, you could say they're cousins, but they're not in the continental family.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, grip, swing, body, positioning. Most young kids, they have palm up from their serve because they want to get the serve in. It's logical, intelligent. They see their target straight ahead through the net, and then the contact point is late. If their contact point is late on their serve, it's a pretty safe bet their contact point is going to be late on their overhead.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. You hear it all the time, is that in today's tennis, you can't come to the net. What do you think of that?
I I really do think that's. I think you might have to build the point. I think you might have to come in behind forcing shot, like you said, weak or weakest. You might have to force first, open the court. But I think there's plenty of opportunity to come in. We had Riley Opelka here during the Dallas Open. Invited is sponsored by Technifiber, and he switched over, so he came and spoke to our group. It was coaches and players. Coach Andreas said, Riley, I think I'm not alone in saying that I would definitely like to see you come in more. And why don't you come in off the serve? And that was his answer, as he said, it's impossible in this day and time. And we respectfully didn't really get into any other comments with it, but no, I certainly think you can. But you have to, it's going to be difficult if you haven't done it, and then suddenly you wait till you're top 100 in the world and you draw Alcaraz first round or Sinner, and then you use that as your developmental ground. But I with certainty, I believe you can.
Well, with Riley Opelka, I know my son used to say that he really liked Riley Opelka, except for he didn't want to hug him because he came up to his belly button. So he's one of those guys that's close to 7 feet. I think it's um, Tom Gullickson, Palm City. Anyway, it's over by
Yeah.
Daytona. So he started off with Gully, and he speaks the world of Gully. Everybody does. Everyone loves the Gullicksons. I spent a little time with Tom Gullickson. He was with the USTA. My son was. I did a couple corporate outings. You probably were with me, Ponca City, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a lot of time with Tim. But with Riley, he got a lot of people upset because he took some shots at doubles, and there's obviously a lot to the business of tennis. That's another whole topic. But I remember watching him as a 12-year-old, and I just don't think that he came in enough then. But I do think his comment would be, it's impossible. I think you could say it would be impossible today to do it every time like they did years ago with the wooden rackets, because people do return.
Yeah.
They do return better with the new equipment and such. But I remember Mackenzie McDonald spent time with us. I asked him so many questions, and on the return to serve, he goes, "Yeah, I aim at the net tape. I keep it low if they're coming in, and I keep it high if they're coming back. But my objective is just to center that return." People watch Djokovic; he's just pounding it to the middle. But with John Isner plays one up, one back doubles. We asked his coach on his podcast, Manny Diaz, and I said, "Well, what if he had a Welby Van Horn backhand volley?" He said he'd have more millions in the bank. And his sidekick on his podcast, funny guy, Sam Query, those guys played one up, one back doubles. They're taller than tall, and they both had huge serves. But I remember being at a tennis teaching conference, and the late Tommy Fye. We were watching Ashley Weinhold, who so well. Her parents were with us for 5 years. She became one in the juniors and hit the ball really well. She was with Elliot Telscher. I'm just saying, here's Elliot, who spent time with Vic. Ashley's on the court. Her dad and mom ran a Vic Braden Tennis College after they were with us. I remember just telling Tommy Fye, who we worked together with Vic, and I said, "You watch this." I said, "This kid is going to finesse every volley." Meaning Sam Query. He goes, "How do you know that?" I go, "Look at the racket head. Look at the grip. He's not sticking volleys." And what's the guy's name? Is such a big serve from Australia.
Well, are you talking?
Oh, famous guy. He just played Sabalenka.
Kyrgios.
Nick Kyrgios. I apologize, Nick. So, Nick Kyrgios was asked during COVID, "Are you working on coming into the net?" And I thought he was kind of tongue tied. It was like, "Yeah, but you should be able to serve and volley more." I mean, really just to mix up the returner. But coming back to,
I thought you were talking about Sam Groth initially. when you said the big serving Australian.
No, Sam Groth, actually,
He had a bomb.
yeah, fastest serve recorded. And you look at what we do with the word picture method, Sam Groth's serve looks like a carbon copy of it.
Yeah.
So no, but Isner and Query, people have such huge
Yeah.
serves like that, but it's Riley Opelka as well. But it's just like Del Potro is such a great athlete. He ended up, being obviously a great player, but you have to be acrobatic at the net. And it's, it is easier for the little guy to move accordingly. But if you go early on, if you're playing all over the court early on, yeah, I do think, especially in doubles, we always say doubles is 36 feet, divide it in half, 18 feet. But if your partner's aggressive, you really only have to cover 15 feet. So you can cover 14 feet just by making one step. If the racket's rounding it off from 27 inches to 24, that's 2 feet. Your arm's 2 feet, that's 4. Your step is 3, that's 7. 7 either way, that's 14. And then I don't think there's any reason to stay back in doubles. But in singles, people returning quite well, then to mix it up. We've said it before on this podcast. I don't know, it was 18 of 19 where he's not known as serving volleying, but Djokovic, Medvedev is so far back in the deuce court. He is a righty. He hits a wide serve, comes in, and people used to call it the can opener. But, you think about years ago, like a Connors, where he's a lefty, he could move that serve around. He was mad at Vic Braden because Vic said his serve goes 74 miles an hour, but his grunt goes 102. But actually later on, Gideon Errol and Vic helped Jimmy with his serve. But, that was one thing that came out in the library is that Gloria Connors has written a thank you note to Vic and Gideon. And, I date myself going back to someone way back like Connors, but he was setting the point up for the most part to come in off the approach shot. But, he wanted an overhead. And it's really pretty much the same thing. Are you going to come in off the ground or come in out of the air? But it's still, the objective is to make that mid-court volley and then do the math up at the net. Can you win 2 out of 3? Can you win 2 out of 3? But yeah, with Riley, my son was much older, or is much older, but Riley had won Junior Wimbledon. My son played him in a pro event, and my son won, but Riley hit 24 aces.
Yeah.
And, what can you do behind that serve? That's what, we've had Steve Denton on the podcast a couple of times, and, he had the fastest serve at one time. Some of you helped me with. We worked indirectly, really, with Karina Marari. We worked with her dad, Albin. He passed away last year. But Albin, girl had the most customized program. It was amazing what she had going on in Boca when we were there. But Colin Dibley had the fastest recorded serve at one time. And, once, sometimes twice a week, she'd have a lesson with Colin, and Albin was right on the money. He said, just serve the first 45 minutes, and then you do whatever you want. So she wins Wimbledon doubles. But part of her junior upbringing was trying to return Colin Dibley's serve. That'll help you wake up and shorten up your swing, and have a rocket coming at you like that. But overheads, more overheads.
Yep.
How are we going to go one more comment on overheads? We'll sign off here for our listeners.
Well, I think you hit on it. Jimmy Connors, the Skyhook.
There's a famous story about the Skyhook. You know it well, Bobby McKinley. They both grew up in the St. Louis area. Bobby's a little bit older, and so Bobby was drop shotting and lobbing, and he beats Jimmy, and Gloria pointed her finger at him and said, "You will never beat my Jimbo that way again." And, Nadal is somebody who used the Skyhook. It's very similar to the cricket move. When you watch someone in cricket, they bend their arm. It's illegal. It's called a throw. But yeah, they use Skyhook because you don't want to lose the net. Once you're up there, you're up there. There's no going back once you're up there. But yeah, you have to love overheads, and I think you have to chart overheads. You want to be obviously an offensive player. The very best players, like a Riley Opelka, they can go straight to offense. The players with big time serve, they go straight on offense. The rest of us, no. You have to work. It's like Agassi said about Roddick. Roddick first was on TV coming up, and Agassi was great in the booth. And they asked him about Roddick, and he goes, "I would die for that serve." He goes, "I got no free points." And I remember them they asked him about Roddick's forehand. And he said, no, it's too complicated. It takes him too long to get the racket in the pocket. But he was our best player for a long, long time, knocking on the door to win Wimbledon. And, Andy was more of an offensive baseliner.
He had a great overhead, though.
And he was certainly an athlete, but he was, again, Braden, valuing volley and potential, trusting your shots, but he wasn't a great volleyer. And he was the one to yell it out in practice. My volleys suck. And you got to work on your weaknesses. And, I don't think it's fair to call him the one slam wonder. I mean, he was number one, Wimbledon final 3 times. I have heard him say that, that one backhand volley, if he made it, would have gone, I think, up 2 sets to love. And he said it wasn't the mechanics on his volley, but who knows? Andy didn't go the college route. Hypothetically, you can only speculate. Maybe if he went the college route, of course, he won the U.S. Open, at 20 or something. He's very young, but if he had gone to college and played doubles.
Yeah.
Because, I think really in the end, someone like Roddick becomes one because of character. And everything. I mean, his family, his parents, his older brothers, especially, John Roddick, how competitive he was. There's all sorts of reasons why someone becomes a number one. Competitive players. But we could sign it off, but you got to have you got to have an overhead. Hopefully your overhead in life is something that is under control, and your overhead in tennis is something you can control. But Dave, thank you. Listeners, thank you.
Yeah.
Another podcast in the book. So I hope we another golden nugget in the tennis treasure chest.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Good night. Thanks. Adios, amigos.